Hey lads, welcome to Brackenhide Hollow. Season 2 is going to start next week. Maybe it already started if you're watching this video a bit late. So let's go through the mechanics, the main mechanics in the trash and the bosses for this dungeon. This is not a complete guide, but just a short video to prepare you for those first runs where you're unfamiliar with the dungeon. Also, quick note, this is in the PTR, but I'm trying to use the default Blizzard frames and everything without any add-ons, any weak cores, so this might look a little bit strange, but bear with me, I'll try to do the explanations as clear as possible, even if the visuals on the screen are not as good as I would like them to be. In the first trash packs, there's 3 main mechanics that you need to be very aware of. The first one is a debuff called Bloody Bite. This is a nasty bleed, but as soon as you heal the person over 90%, it disappears, and that usually goes only on the tank. Next, the big War Scourge mobs do a whirlwind, which your melee should be aware of, but the more dangerous mechanic here is called Hideous Crackle, which is just a fear that they're casting that is a must interrupt so you don't get feared and run into other packs as well. And you're also going to see the Mystics, which cast a totem on the ground, not very well visible in this specific scenario, but you have to focus the totem because if the totem is down, the Mystics are going to cast a disease which stacks and reduces your movement and haste stacking. And if you cannot remove disease, there's cauldrons around this first area which alchemists can click on, and that gives you a charge that dispels 1 disease per click. And last but not least, there are cages around that first area. You need to open 5 of them to summon the first boss, and they're not clickable in combat, so don't forget to click them after you kill a pack and move to the next one. And we're at the first boss. There's 3 mobs here. The Hackwo one has a cleave, so don't stand near your tank or in front of that mob. She also has a whirlwind attack, so be careful if you're melee or again if you're close to that mob. The Trick Totem mob is a caster, and as you can see right now, it's casting a greater heal, which has to be interrupted by priority because obviously it's going to heal the bosses. And then we have Gash Tooth, which right now marks somebody for butchering. That person takes a lot of damage, so they need a defensive and a lot of heals. This mob is also going to cast Gash Frenzy, which hits several people in your group, leaves a debuff bleed on them, but if you heal them above 90%, this again disappears. Each boss also has a special ability. There's a Dispel that basically sheeps somebody for 15 seconds, but you can obviously clear that as a healer. There is a totem on the ground that you need to kill very quickly because it also hexes somebody and heals the bosses. And last but not least, there is the Savage Charge that you see on the screen right now. The tank basically needs to stand between you and the boss, otherwise this is going to one-shot you as it just happened in this video. It's also worth mentioning that the bosses enrage as soon as one of them goes below 15%, so you want to cleave them equally, and also they do more damage if a player is missing more health in your party, so as a healer you want to keep everybody topped up so the bosses do less damage overall. The trash that follows has a bunch of kicks, swirlies on the ground, stacking disease debuff, all of the nasty stuff, but there's nothing major there, so I'm just going to skip to the next boss. 3-Mouth has a frontal which knocks back your tank, so make sure you're not in front of the boss. He's also going to cast Decaying Spray, which targets few players and oozes spawn on their locations. Try to stay close to your tank so it's easier for them to grab aggro and cleave down those mobs as quickly as possible, because they have a cast which does a pulsating AoE damage. Once they die, they explode and they leave a nasty puddle on the ground, so basically you want to kite the boss around the room in a circle, leaving more space to kite and to kill the oozes. Once the boss reaches 100 energy, he's going to pull everybody in, and you want to leave one person inside of that puddle so he gets consumed, as I just did in this segment. The consumed person of course takes a lot of damage, so he needs a lot of heals, but they also can cast and do anything until they're being consumed. You want to leave one person in, because if you don't, the boss gets a permanent enrage, so it makes it much harder to kill. And one more thing to note here, you don't want the same person to be consumed twice in a row, because they get a debuff which increases the subsequent damages of the next consume. You're also going to encounter Sting Breath, which is a mini boss between the second and the third boss. Be careful because he has this whirlwind which pushes you back, and if you fight him on the bridge, you can get thrown off board. He also has the ability Sting Breath, which you want to spread for because he's going to target somebody and you want only one person to get hit by this. They get disoriented and of course it does a bunch of damage. The trash that follows is relatively easy. There are some invisible mobs which are going to put a poison on you, and there's also a bunch of animals that are going to fixate on you, so you might as well kite. The next boss is called Gutshot, and we actually put some trash on top of it, but he's going to have 2 hyenas at least during the fight. When they're dead, he's going to call more, so basically you have to manage those adds during the fight. He's going to cast traps around the room, which are those big green circles, and you actually want to kite the hyenas on top of those traps because they get trapped. He also has a bunch of abilities, as knocking back your tank, who has to be careful not to get into one of the traps. He also has an ability that frees the hyenas from the traps, gives them frenzy, which you can dispel. He makes them fixate a player, and also if a player gets hit, they get a nasty debuff, which also reduces the healing they take. So if you're a healer, be prepared to spam some heals if somebody is not good enough kiting the hyenas. The hyenas themselves also have an ability that makes them jump to a player, so even if you're far away from them, be prepared because they can be jumping on you any moment. Also, keep in mind that you can actually kill this boss second and the 3-mouth boss third, depending on your pathing and your route in this dungeon. That also means that you might have to deal with the gauntlet, and the mobs that you're going to see in the trash before the last boss include a bunch of rot singers, which are going to cast those diseases on you. They spread, so stay out of the green circles, and there's also a totem that they cast on the ground, which you need to focus and kill very quickly, because it applies that withering debuff that we talked about in the beginning, which is stacking. Make sure to clear all the trash around the last boss so you don't aggro it by accident during the fight, and get ready to encounter Rateye. One of the first mechanics that you're going to see is Choking Rat Cloud, which is going to summon this big green circle on the ground, which is going to go around the room, so make sure to avoid it because inside you take damage, you're silenced, and you get a debuff that I'm going to mention in just a second. Rotburst Totems obviously summons a totem somewhere in the room, which you need to kill very quickly because it has an interruptible cast. If the cast goes off, obviously it does AoE damage, but more importantly, it applies Withering Rot to every player. This is a stacking dot that not only does damage, but it also reduces the damage that you do by 5% per stack. At 100 energy, the bosses cast Decaying Strength, which removes all the debuffs from the players, but the more debuffs you have, the more damage you take, and the more debuffs the boss dispels from you, the more damage the boss starts doing. That is accompanied by a green circle that you need to avoid, and that is basically a rinse and repeat. There's also a tank buster, which puts a absorb healing shield on them, which you need to deal with every now and then. And there could be also nasty overlaps where the green big circle is on top of the totem that you need to kill before it bursts into more debuffs, into more damage, and then more damage for the boss, etc. So long story short, kill the totems as quickly as possible and then kill the boss before it becomes way too powerful and it kills you. Quite a simple strategy, isn't it? I guess the last thing to mention here is that this boss fight actually ends at 5%, not at 0, so that's one good thing about it. And with that being said, expect a more in-depth and longer guide for this dungeon. This was just scratching the surface, so you're well prepared next week when this is actually live on the servers. Feel free to subscribe to this channel for more Mythic Plus tips and short dungeon guides, but until then, take care, and wherever you are, be there.
Your withered